All right, welcome and good morning, everybody, to Breakout Rooms. We are going to get started right on time because we have a jam-packed session for you this morning. It is 30 fast minutes. We had designed this particular presentation with our TLFs in mind, so this may have some information in here that you already know, but it is designed so that you could take this back to your staff, to the teachers that you work with, and use it in that way. So if some of this information is something you already know, think about how could I present this to my staff? Think it with the lens of how can I turn around and use this in a professional development setting at my school. We have some norms for this morning. The most important one is at the bottom. If you haven't used breakout rooms before, the last one's super important because we're going to try something that might be scary or new for you. So let's be adventurous and learn something new today. I am Kathy Wolf-James, but I'm joined by my colleague, Lori Arnold. Lori is a teacher support specialist in curriculum and instruction, and her favorite children's author is Roald Dahl.
And you guys have had the pleasure of meeting Kathy. So Kathy James is here to help support us in our 3 through 5 breakout room session today. And her favorite author is Gail Gibbons.
Thank you, Lori. And both of us are always here to support your instructional needs. If you're joining us for the K2 session later, you'll be joined by Andrea Quintana, and Maggie can't join us. She's double booked, but she did help create a lot of the content for today. So shout out to Maggie. So we're going to start off with the big why. Why breakout rooms? Well, the biggest one for us, especially right now, is that the work that we do in our breakout rooms will prepare our students for hybrid small groups. And we like this because it maximizes those instructional minutes for differentiation in your classroom. It helps to build communication skills and relationships, pardon me, with for your students, and is really critical for that oral language development. Without our in-person interactions that we are used to, our traditional in-person interactions, we really need to be very purposeful about creating opportunities for that oral language development. And this last one is really important. It varies the instructional format. Sitting in front of a computer all day with that as your only instructional format can be very frustrating to a student, and also they'll lose their interest. So having different ways to vary that instructional format is really critical. So at the very basics, we have this Google Meet how-to. Like, what does it look like from the teacher's perspective of how to use Google Breakout Rooms? This is a video intended for you to reference again later, because when we do go into a breakout room, I'm going to share my screen so you can see exactly what I see. And I'm not going to play it.
You want to find out.
There we go. So we are going to start off with a strategy for how you can group your students. And I am going to send a poll to everybody. And if you haven't used polls, this is a good experience. You should see a little pop-up with me asking, what is your comfort level with breakout rooms? Go ahead and take a moment to respond. And you should be able to see the results. And so if you look at our slide, we like polls because you can use them. It's another Google embedded feature in Google Meet that can help you form groups that help vary the instructional format for your students. So even if you're using breakout rooms, you don't have to use them the same way every time. So asking a question like I just did, I'm having you reflect on your understanding of breakout rooms, your experience, and from there I can provide differentiation. But I could also ask a formative assessment question, trying to see my students' knowledge as we get started in the lesson. I can also provide choices. Another way to do this is, which are you most interested in learning about in the wetlands today? Are you interested in learning about pollution, species? Are you interested in learning about history over time within Albuquerque? I can provide choices even within the content my students are learning, but also in the product. Who would like to make a video? Who would like to work together on a slide presentation to show their learning? And these are just some ideas. We're going to get to a point later where we'd love to hear some of your ideas also for how you can use breakout rooms in different ways. And I'm going to pass it off to Lori, who's going to talk to you about systems and routines.
So there is no magic in systems and routines that you guys don't already know. This is just like what we do at the beginning of the year, whether we're face-to-face or virtual, is you want to make sure that you really spend that time setting your expectations so that your students have a very firm understanding of what exactly it is that you want them to do in their small group, whether it's a virtual small group or a face-to-face small group, or you have them mixed up where you have students that are with you in your classroom working in a small group with students that are at home. So some of the ways that you can set up your small groups is you can use a sign up. So you can have students sign up for a topic or way that they want to work. So you can set up your groups that way. You can do it on interest. So you can use interest charts or pretty much any way that you would set up a small group within your face-to-face classroom, you can make that apply over to when you're doing virtual or hybrid. You can also use your small groups for pre-planned groups, where if you know that you need to pull back a small group to do some reteaching or do some enrichment, you can do that. You can have students rotate through small rooms if you set up shortcuts. If you guys are familiar with how to do that, you can do that. If you're not, you can let us know and we will be happy to help you figure out how to do that. So basically, like I said, there's no secret magic in this. It's just really identifying why you want students to be working in a small group, and then coming up with how you want to make sure that you have that set nice and clearly for them. All right, go ahead, Kathy, and we can move on to the next slide. So some of the things that you might consider if we move into hybrid is, building off the successes of the small rooms that you've already set up with your students. So whatever you've already taught them about the expectations for working virtually in a small group, build off that and just explain how it might look a little bit different when you have kids with you in your classroom and online. You can look at the station rotation model. That is one of the models that is possible. That's the one that the district is sharing with schools and with teachers, and know that it's only a suggestion. It is not the end all be all. If there's one thing that we know about our district here at APS is that all schools do things a little bit differently and that our communities are very different. So we have to take and keep that all in mind when we are designing our hybrid instruction. So the thing that is nice about hybrid, hybrid's hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It's going to be a challenge, but I know that teachers are up to it. That it does allow for you to have in-person as well as at home groups to collaborate together. So you can have students that are with you working in a small group with students at home. And the breakout rooms, provide that flexibility so that you can use those. And the other thing that's nice about breakout rooms, if you haven't used them, is that you can time them and you have control. You can go into different breakout rooms, check on what the students are doing, and you can pull them back. So that's one of the nice things about using breakout rooms with small groups. So the other thing, just like you would do, I mentioned earlier, just like you would do when you are setting up your expectations at the beginning of any school year with students, you're going to set up your expectations for the small group. You're going to introduce them to their group roles and what the expectations for each person who is doing whatever role they are assigned and however you choose to assign them. So just make sure that they really understand if they are assigned to be the facilitator what that means that they are to be doing, or if they are the recorder or secretary or timekeeper. And we all know that the best practice in any type of small group work, of course, is to have kids involved in some sort of job so that they are focused on doing the task you want them to do instead of being that naughty body in there doing what you don't want them to do. So there are several different types of role groups. You can go out and find them on the internet if the examples that we've given you aren't exactly what you're searching for. There are all different kinds of different expectations, and there's some that, you know, if you want them to be cute, you can find cute ones, or you can find just straightforward. But I think having kids have access to those anchor charts about exactly what their expectations are key, so that they can refer back to them. Here is some more examples of what breakout room expectations can look like. And, you know, it's all about the culture that you are developing with your kids, as long as you're really, really setting and building that strong culture of collaboration with your students, and that it's a place where we can make mistakes and go back and relearn or try something differently. The other thing that is also a nice anchor chart to have for your kids is to kind of scaffold for them, so that if they're not used to this, to give them an explicit example, like the partner talk rubric that we are sharing with you. So if your students are at level 1, to really have them practicing just with a partner. So, you know, I would really encourage, if you have not used virtual small groups, um, to keep them really small, either in partners or a triad, so that everybody has a chance to speak and can be very involved. It also, again, you know, just make sure you have those anchor charts, and make sure to set your time limit. And the shorter the time limit to get the work done, the better chance that you have of the students actually achieving what you're asking them to do. Because if they have that time pressure there and know that they're going to have to come back to the larger group or to you to share out the work that they've done, you'll have a better chance of them actually completing successfully what you've set out for them to do. And then here are just some considerations for small group instruction, whether it be virtual or in person or hybrid. So, you know, when you're setting up small groups, it is a great way to have students um, learn to listen to each other, and also have an opportunity to speak, especially those students that are very hesitant to speak in the large group. It gives them an opportunity to practice. Um, it also gives them time to have some more self reflection. And if you're using rubrics with them to help them to become advocates of their own learning and learn some agency for themselves, groups are a great way for extensions in learning, so that you can provide opportunities for students to dig deeper into the portion of the topic that they're interested in. So it also gives student choice, which is great, because we all know that if students have choice, we get more buy-in from them into their learning, and they're more eager to approach the learning. And then also, you can have students present or create their own lessons to present in a small group or into the bigger groups. So these are just good ideas or suggestions about how to approach small group if you're not really sure exactly what you want to have come out, your outcome from your small groups. So we're going to also think about small groups in terms of how we apply it into content. And a lot of this will probably look very familiar to you guys. So these would be the same whether it's in person or virtual. You can use small groups to have them practice something. So, um, you know, and make sure that you are practicing those transitions. The one thing for me personally, and you guys are way more experts at this because you've been doing it all year, but that it actually takes, you have to add like that extra minute anytime you pull them back because they don't come back instantaneously, right? It takes a little bit of time. And, they also maybe being called back to the main room, but Google gives them a minute before it automatically pulls them back. So you need to make sure that you add that extra time in so that you get everybody back together. It's also can work for your daily 5 rotations. If you guys are used to using the daily 5 type of format with your instruction, you can use breakout rooms for that as well. And then you can also use this for differentiation. And we have made a couple slides at the end of the presentation that we're not going to specifically go over with you all today, but just gives you an idea that you can set up different rooms for different purposes. So you can have a room where students can come just to ask you for help. You can have a quiet work room where students that need to work independently or they want to work by themselves, but they can still be on in a Google Meet, but with maybe their camera off and they can work quietly. Or you might have students that want to collaborate with each other. So you can set up a room. And there's some suggestions on how that might look. If you haven't heard of Ditch That Textbook, that's where we got the information. They have some really great ideas around how to make virtual learning and hybrid learning workable for you. And now we're going to turn it back over to Kathy, and we're going to actually experience what it's like to get into a breakout room.
Thank you, Lori. Yes, we're going to be going into a breakout room here in a minute, and I'm going to show you behind the curtain, let you see what it looks like from my perspective, and we can also troubleshoot any questions while we're showing, just so like if you've gotten to this point that you were confused, please feel free to pop a question in the chat so we can address them as we go. So as Lori said, expectations and having your systems and routines is really critical for a successful breakout room, and of course it takes time to build up. What we have here is our expectations and objectives slide for our breakout room. And this is a format, like if your students got used to this visual, they would know right away, okay, I can look, we're gonna be in there for 4 minutes. I know where to find the goal. I know what the first person in the breakout room is responsible for doing. I know what the second person in the breakout room is responsible for doing, and the third. And I know that cameras should be on and mics should be on. So this is like a great example of a way to get your students into the routine of breakout rooms with clear expectations each and every single time. So today, we are going to be going into breakout rooms with about three people. Our numbers make it a little, there'll be some groups of 4. But when you get into your breakout room, the goal is that each person shares one idea for breakout rooms in their classroom. The goal is that everybody shares one idea for breakout rooms in their classroom. And the first person in the room is going to make sure the question is being asked. They're going to remind everybody, keep the conversation going. They are the question prompter. The second person in the room is going to be recording all of the answers on this spreadsheet. This spreadsheet I just popped into the chat is going to be used for recording the answers. And the third person would be responsible for sharing out to the entire group. And we will have 4 minutes in our breakout room, so it's going to be fast for everybody to share. And I'm going to share my tab of the spreadsheet so everybody can see. When you get into your breakout room, it'll tell you which room number you are. You will come to, if you're the second person, you'll come to the room number that you see in your breakout room, and you will start typing the answers of the 3 people in your group. And then when we come back, we will share out. We are in the grades 3 through 5 breakout room session. So we are over on the left, and the right is for K2 in the future. But if you are going to be sharing this information with your staff, come back to this document later in the day because the K2 column will also have a lot of information you can use with your staff. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what it looks like.
Everyone's joining us. I was in group 9 and I heard something really interesting. Jennifer Young said sometimes her students will are like super into their work, super into their conversation, and they don't want to come back. And she said sometimes she has to pop in and remind them. And I saw Breakout Room 4 was a little slow getting back. I'm like, uh-oh, their conversation must be really good. I don't want to interrupt that. But of course, right, there's an agenda. There's a conversation that needs to keep moving. Jennifer also pointed out that in Zoom, it does bring you right back. So that's just like a good thing to point out as being a little different. So looking at our spreadsheet, I'm gonna go ahead and pop it up. It's full of ideas and feel free to keep adding to the ideas. Oh, we only had 12 groups, so I'll stop right there. Can I get somebody from Breakout Room 3 to share their favorite idea? Because they added another row. Someone in group 3, my favorite idea.
One of the things that somebody talked about was editing writing, kids going in and presenting and editing their writing together.
Oh, I love that idea. Thank you for sharing. So when you do go to breakout rooms, make sure when you come back, you have a way for your students to share out their information to honor. You could say, I'd like somebody to amplify something they heard. Let's put something on blast that we just heard in our breakout room. So I have for you 2 other video samples that came from real classrooms. One is a kindergarten example, and the other is from a 4th grade classroom. There we go. So if you need to reference back, what does it look like from the teacher perspective, and you just want to look inside of a classroom where this is actually happening, you can use these videos, but you could also create one with your own students if you're sharing this with your staff as an exemplar. So we have some tips for you that you can reference back as well. Remember, we created this slide deck so that you have some resources to build off of when you need to share and talk about breakout rooms with your colleagues, but also for you if you need some more resources to dive deeper in your own learning. We will continue this presentation in the future. Lori earlier talked about Ditch That Textbook, and this is exactly what she was talking about. These are some really wonderful resources. At the March TLF Summit, we are going to continue the breakout and small group conversation. As we move into hybrid, the conversation is going to change, but we are going to keep talking about small groups. And you can look forward to another session in March where we're going to address it further. Lori, what would you like to add at this point? Keeping in mind we have 1 minute.
I don't think I'm going to put the link in. Laura asked for that, so I'm trying to get that posted right now. So I'll add the link. You guys should have the slide deck. Just make a copy of it first, please. Let me see why I can't get. Here we go. My internet's running a bit slow.
All of our students are hopping on at the same time. So if you have any questions, Lori and I will stick around, but we want to say thank you for joining us this morning, for sharing your brilliant ideas in our breakout rooms. And we just wish you a really great day of learning at the TLF Summit. Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Thank you. Good to see everybody.